Hello, is anyone there? This is Grimm Grinner, on all channels.
Infected attacks rampant in the GAT. The government failed, unified in the corporation.
Have a safe day.
Desolation, an endless wasteland.
Nothing but static.
Searching for a shred of hope.
Welcome to the Wastes.
Afternoon, Wasteland. This is Grimm Grinner on all channels, transmitting from a small shelter just outside of Falls Edge. I've been on a bit of a longer supply run, especially after having a scrap with some creeps while on the way here, and planning and celebrating Longshot's birthday shindig before making this run. Well, it wasn't just the corpos that kept me away for so long, Wasteland. I have taken a bit of time while I'm here to investigate the weird facility that's caught some wandering attention from folks here at Falls Edge. Some shady figures have been frequenting the settlement and seem to keep coming back this way. They haven't caused a problem, but a lot of people are unsure of them. I wasn't sure at first if they were going to be jury members or corporate spies or something like that, which certainly would be a first. Normally they just come into a settlement guns blazing in their suits and masks without needing espionage. I also wrote off corporate mercenaries for the same reason, since mercs would probably have been run out of there. With all the other random factions out there, I wasn't sure what else to expect. All I know is that I didn't expect what I did find there. Now, this subject matter might be a bit off-putting for some younger wastelanders and wanderers with decent morals, so I am warning you right now that this is going to get very, very weird. So, this factory, or I guess processing plant, or what, I don't know what to call it really. Either way, it didn't have any sort of defense set up, no one monitoring anyone coming or going, so I correctly assumed that it wasn't a hostile group, and that whatever was going on was enough to deter anyone from approaching. I honestly hate it when I'm right sometimes. When I got to the main entrance, I was greeted by an interesting individual, to say the least. I never caught their name, but they were dressed more like a fucked up raider, which says a lot. Lots of dried blood and spikes and leather and good stuff to scare someone off, despite the honestly manic way of them acting. They asked me if I'd ever been there before, called it the butchery, and I guess it was obvious that I hadn't, since they took me right in, chatting away about the place. I wish I could have slowed them down to catch half of what they were saying, but I was just honestly horrified at what I found. So, this butchery, as it's called, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a spot to get, meat. But not the kind of meat someone who still has any lick of sanity would eat. I guess what I'm getting at is cannibals, and not a small amount of them. Surprisingly put together and seemingly not threatening in any way, aside from the, blood and viscera that the ones there at the time were covered in and enjoying. I was out of my depth for sure, but whatever their name was kept yammering on, and I only snapped out of my horror when they stopped, having asked me if I was here to see the meat packer, which I have to say is a hell of a moniker to adopt, especially for a leader of a cannibal eatery. I've heard some interesting new names people have adopted out here, but that one just gives me a lot of different visuals, even before knowing what this guy is up to. So I snapped out of it and gained my composure enough to say yes and be brought to meet the meat packer. This guy was wearing a blood-stained apron with dozens of different carving implements hanging from it, over top of what almost looked like surgical gear and a face mask that covered most of his face, with the longer black hair covering the rest. This guy was every bit as frightening as I would have expected, and here I was entering his, sort of bunker. I was actually surprised to still be alive at this point with some of the hungry looks I had already received. I was even more surprised when I heard the raspy tone of the meat packer's voice and taken back by how he spoke. This wasn't your typical raving lunatic, despite the appearance. this was someone who knew which way was up, even in the wasteland. Unsurprisingly, I found my fear turning to curiosity. Not to eat human flesh, absolutely not. Rather sign up to be a creep than get to that point. No, I was curious about this person and what they had built up around them and why I hadn't come across a put-together group like this. I mean, yes, I've encountered different cannibals and ferals, and they usually end up being people at their wits' end or raving marauders that gnaw on a forearm to scare the shit out of whoever they're going to slaughter, but someone with eloquence and seemingly with their sanity still intact? Never. So I sat and talked with the meat packer. Remiss to have left any of my transmitters or even a small recorder here at my camp to be able to broadcast anything. But I did get information, which is, I guess, what I went in for in the first place. So, as best as I can remember, here's what I learned. The meat packer was a survivor after the fall. They went into a shelter with a bunch of scattered people and were able to make it through the devastation outside. Luckily, they were able to survive for quite some time, despite initially thinking there weren't enough resources to go around. Of course, they eventually found out the truth, sometime after they left the bunker, that there had been a sort of corporate mandate for their specific shelter that anyone who passed away was to be consumed by the remainder. I don't know what sort of sick, sadistic son of a bitch thought that up, but apparently everyone in there went for it. From the sound of things, there were clear instructions on what parts to use and not, since even the corporations wanted to regulate cannibalism for some reason. But at this point, that doesn't surprise me much. Those fuckers have messed with so much, I only get more disgusted every time I find what new low they're reaching to. Anyways, when the meat packer, who I'm gonna shorten to MP to save some breath, found this out, he went through a lot of emotions, but eventually decided that it had been for the best, since he was still here and alive. But he found that any other purveyors of rare meat consumption, as he calls it, tended to be the same sort of mad individuals who have succumbed to the darker parts of the wastes. So he started searching for others like himself, who chose to eat this way, but wanted to do it in a more, I don't know, like a refined manner, I guess. He also wanted to sort of bring a sense of dignity or morals or something like that to it. By that, I mean he has approached the creation of the butchery with a strict policy of not killing to eat. Everyone who goes there is under strict rules to only eat meat that has been voluntarily given. Something about honoring the sacrifices of the people from his bunker, something like that. At any rate, it seems like it has been well respected by the patrons he's had, and they surprisingly have stuck to the rules MP has set in place. He apparently has made some slight exceptions in the case of corporate agents brought to the butchery, but from the sounds of things, that process is more lengthy, since that's also deemed as chemically enhanced. So they have to clean it. I don't know how they do that. I wasn't asking any more questions at that point. Suffice to say, the butchery, for all the shady individuals that frequent it, is a relatively peaceful spot, despite all the signs pointing to the contrary. I hope it stays that way, and I hope I never have to find myself going in there ever again. It's bad enough I have to try and find a way to make myself not stink from being in there as long as I was. Maybe a ride through a dust storm on the way back will clear that out. Well, that about does it for this transmission, Wasteland. I can't see the sun properly from where I'm at, but it feels like it's starting to hang low in the sky. I should get some rest to make the trek back to the bunker in the morning before Scrapper and Longshot start to worry. This has been Grimm Grinner on all channels. See you in the wastes. Welcome to the Wastes is a Voice in the Static production, written, starring, and produced by Edward Grimm Grinner Hutchinson. You can find Welcome to the Wastes on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and other social media sites, and there's a merch store through Etsy. Links are in the episode description. Welcome to the Waste is also made possible with the love and support of listeners and wastelanders like you. If you want to help support the show on Patreon, that link will also be in the description, alongside the list of monthly supporters. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the Waste.